I want to see a show of hands. How many of you have got diversity targets at the moment? Not as many as I thought, okay, but some of you. So those of you that do, I'm sure you could probably relate that, you know, you're a bit sick of people saying, oh, we must get 50% females in, or there's this golden percentage or golden target that is kind of held over your head that you must achieve. And I guess the struggle is, how do you manage your senior leadership and how do you manage your stakeholders when they're sort of putting that pressure on you to achieve those targets? And it's all about ensuring they understand the bigger picture. So for those of you who may be in the tech space or may have to fill roles in engineering, for example, it's all very well that they're saying bring 50% females in, but what if you don't actually have 50% females in the actual workforce in the UK? That's a bit challenging, isn't it? What are you meant to do? You know, have a wand and just magic it all up. So just make sure you manage those expectations. Make sure that they understand the challenges that you will currently be dealing with, and that it's not just necessarily as easy as just bringing those females in, for example. But it's also helping them understand it does not happen overnight. So I think earlier we discussed that, you know, it's like over 200 years before we'll get into a position where we have equal females and males represented in roles. And it's definitely not going to happen overnight. And one of the things that I make sure I do is with my stakeholders is say to them, okay, that's fine. You have this target that you want to achieve, and that's fantastic. And we're all for working towards a goal. But I can tell you now that that's not going to happen overnight. And I'm certainly not going to achieve that with just one of my campaigns. But you know what I can do? I can definitely try. So finding the right person with the right skills. So I think we were having a conversation on one of our tables earlier, and we were saying, you know, how do you get your recruitment team on board? Because all they want to do is find the right person for the job, especially the hiring managers. So you often have to have that challenging conversation of saying, yes, we want to get the right person with the right skills for the job, but at the same time, we need to be mindful of diversity. Agree up front how you will measure success. Again, Dan spoke about that earlier. It's really important that you agree up front. So, you know, you may say, oh, yeah, go ahead, go and get, you know, a diverse workforce in for us. And then as you get midway through a campaign, they say, well, how's it going? You know, what are you doing about tracking it? So sit down with your stakeholders and agree up front how they want to see. And it's not always about measuring when you've got to the end of a role or at the end of a campaign how you perform, but actually you'll get a lot of value from monitoring it throughout the campaign. So how are your applications looking when the role's live, when you're 1 week in, when you're 2 weeks in? Is there anything you can do to change that before the role closes? What about our assessment process? You know, is your assessment process having a detriment effect to the underrepresented groups? Is there anything that you can do about that as well? I'm not here to kind of say to you, oh, you need to throw loads of money, you need to spend money with advertising agencies. Really, what we did, we just profiled our existing staff. We actually got them to tell their story. It's genuine, it's authentic, and actually what you'll find is that people can relate a lot better to it as well. Make it interactive, use videos, use blogs, use microsites. You know, blogs are very easy to do. Videos these days are quite easy to create as well, and as well as microsites. So making the role, having information accessible for individuals as well. Make the role as accessible as possible. So this is, I'm really big on this. So for me, whenever I, you know, get given a target or, you know, have diversity stats to achieve, I say to them, well, I'm going to make the role as accessible as possible. Because by doing that, I truly know that I've reached every single person I can possible and told them about this job. And only then will I say, well, you know what? The people that applied are the people that applied. Provide more information to help with selection and deselection. So things like booklets, running open days. So I think statistically, they found that a lot of females were put off from applying for jobs because they didn't think that they reached all the criteria. And often the more information you provide, the more of an informed decision someone can make and feel confident in applying for the role. So internal diversity and inclusion attraction. Again, I've talked about profiling your existing colleagues. What communication channels do you have available to you? You might have a comms department. You might have newsletters that you can make the most of. You might have internal sites. So we use Yammer, for example, which is like an internal sort of social media site where we can put messaging on there. What about your staff network groups? Can they help you out as well with promoting that role? So yeah, staff network groups is actually something we're quite big on. Even when we are attracting for roles externally, they will all have connections, they will all know people. Get people to be your brand ambassadors, get people to champion the role and reach out to people that you may not necessarily have thought of. We also do things like drop-in sessions, which is really helpful because it means that individuals can come along and actually hear from the people that do the job and have an opportunity to ask questions. And sometimes they feel comfortable doing it in a group environment, sometimes they feel more comfortable doing it on a one-to-one basis. And actually we've had quite a lot of success from people who've come to our drop-in sessions and being able to really find out a lot more. We also create support materials. I think a lot of people who apply for our jobs are not quite sure what they're getting themselves into. They're not quite sure what the role actually entails, and they can find that quite intimidating. So what we try and do is put information in the form of a site or a booklet and say, this is what the role actually is. This is what the assessment process actually looks like, because I know a lot of people do get intimidated by that. And actually, while we're at it, why don't you hear from someone that currently does the job right now and read some of their Q&As. When we do a campaign, we always like to have faces of the campaign. We really like to celebrate and show off how diverse our workforce is. So the top left is our compliance officer campaign. So I'm sure you're thinking, what on earth does a compliance officer do? I know, and I'm sure people applying for the job had no idea as well. So I'll get onto that in a little bit, but we showed off kind of the diversity representation we had there. Top right is our customer service assistants. Some of you may recognise them, especially the gentleman in the top right. He's at Oxford Circus. Yeah, we've got a few nods there. And we really wanted to kind of celebrate the different types of people that work for us. And it goes beyond whether you're male or female, whether you're of a ethnic minority group. It's actually about your personality and what you represent as well. And below was an internal campaign that we did, which was for trains managers. So it was kind of a promotional opportunity for people who were train drivers. And again, we wanted to celebrate and encourage people to go into a managerial role. So again, maintaining that diversity into kind of your leadership roles. These are our Facebook and Twitter posts. So again, the visuals of the campaign. So the left was for our night tube train operator role. So getting females into a night tube driver role is very, very challenging. So we really wanted to profile one of our existing train drivers, but also talk about how she makes it work in her lifestyle. So yes, she drives trains at night. What else does she do? Well, actually, she's a part-time travel agent. Hear more about her story and what she does. So we do a lot of open days and events. So the top right was when we held an ex-military day. So we got ex-military to come in. We actually talked to them about any transferable skills they may have. We did a bit of a CV workshop with them and then talked about any opportunities we felt might be applicable to them. And there's bottom left is one of our popular sort of drop-in sessions. As you can see, when people hear they can get more information about a job, when people hear more information that, oh my God, you're going to give me a few tips about the assessment process, they turn up. They're there, they're ready to learn a little bit more. So the recruitment process, it's all very well that you attract the talent and you've done all this fantastic creative work and they apply for the job, but how do you ensure that you maintain diversity and inclusion throughout the recruitment process? So anonymised applications trials, so that's something we've been doing over the past year. So perhaps when Charlotte spoke a few years back, she's probably shared her aspirations of, you know, we really want to achieve something, so we're going to start trialling products. So what we did sort of within the last 12 months is we actually trialed two kind of technologies, and what they do is anonymise the CVs. So Dan spoke about it earlier. And once we went through that process, we were able to decide which one felt right for us. So that is a way that we just make sure there's no bias when it comes to screening the CVs. In our more high volume roles, what we actually do is rather than screen on CVs because the volumes are too big, we actually get candidates to do an online situational judgment test and base their progression into assessment on their scores only. So maintaining a diverse and inclusive workforce, so that's when the real hard work starts. How do you maintain it? So women in leadership, so there is an initiative run by our exec team where they had a challenge on how do we get more females into leadership roles, you know, especially when we are in a position where for leadership roles there's this really great emphasis on skills and experience, and you know, it's all very well that you want to put female into the role, but what if that female doesn't have the skills? are you compromising here? And there's also that fine line of positive discrimination as well. You don't want to be putting someone into a role just because they're of a particular gender. And you also have to think about inclusivity. What about the male? Are they just going to feel like they don't have to bother applying because they know they're not going to get through? So you just got to keep that balance there. So something that we've done is when we are presenting applicants to the hiring manager is that we actually offer them an array of experience. So we say, here you go, here's one candidate who we know for sure matches the experience and actually comes from a similar industry to us. We'll say, here's another candidate who's got slightly different skill sets, and here's another candidate who's a bit of a wild card here, but we can see they've got transferable skills. And it's taken that time to sit with the hiring managers and talk them around and make them understand why this person may be someone they want to consider in their mix of applicants. And it's them that you open up the communication channels and you are able to introduce perhaps candidates that you may not have expected into the mix as well. And that's something that's been working quite well with women in our leadership team. Identifying talent and maximising potential. So map the current people that work for you, map your current workforce. There are people there who are your future talent. So what are you going to do about it? Because often you may see in organisations that particularly BAME stagnate at a certain point in terms of promotion, or even females because some of them go on maternity leave. So making sure you identify who your talent are and maximising their potential, making sure they have development plans and they know where they're heading is a really important way to encourage people to keep progressing. Initiatives. So we have a returners programme for anyone who's been away from the organisation a while, just to kind of introduce them back into the world of working and back at TfL as well. And we do a lot of work with ex-military. We actually ran a military industry day. We run that once a year, and it's our way of bringing them in to have a conversation about their transferable skills, because a lot of them actually don't know what skills they can transfer over. And particularly with Transport for London, we have very unique roles, so they might not always know that they're right for the role. Yeah, it's actually worked quite well just having those conversations with them. And, you know, they do actually offer quite a good set of skill sets that can be transferable even into things like project management as well. So, like I said, make your role as accessible as possible. Make sure you're reaching out to all areas of the community. So, summary, diversity is more than just a percentage. Ensure that your managers and your senior leadership team understand the bigger picture. Finding the right person with the right skills by making your role as accessible as possible, and making sure that the managers know that that's what you're doing. Measure throughout the whole process is really, really important. It will give you a lot of insight into what you're doing right, but it also give you a lot of insight into where you can improve. Speak to your staff, tell their story. It's very genuine and it's very authentic, and you'll be surprised the kind of stories that you may come across that will actually relate to a lot of people. Be creative, be resourceful. So a lot of the images I've shown you today, we've done in-house. It's just been a case where we've sat around and thought, what cool way could we achieve to attract people into our organisation? We're quite fortunate that we have a range of wonderful people with different personalities and backgrounds that we can profile. Maintain your efforts throughout the process. It does not stop after attraction. Map your current workforce and maximise their potential as well.